Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel. I'm your host Anthony Sassano and today is the 30th of November 2020. So for today's episode we'll be going through the events of the weekend and also the events from Friday as well. So let's get into it. So as we can see over the weekend, we had some really positive kind of like price appreciation with ETH and a bunch of other cryptos after that brutal dump we saw last week, right? ETH touched about, I think it was 490, probably lower than that. Yeah, if we scroll out here, you can see that ETH went down to about $480. Kind of bounced off that and then kind of retested the lows over here with 490. And then since then we've just kind of done this march back up, and it's pretty cool to see because we fell from about $620 down to what it is here, and we're almost back up there. We got $586 at time of recording. Hopefully it's higher by the time you guys see this video. But yeah, I think this is really strong. You really only see these kind of bounces during a bull market. If this was a classical thing where it was a bear market and then you had like this kind of dump and then you had a bounce, it wouldn't continue. It would actually just like kind of like a pebble on water. It would just like keep going down, right? And you just bleed out over time to find a bottom, and that's what bear markets usually are. But yeah, we haven't seen that this time. We're just seeing so much strength, and obviously, I mean, it's pretty easy to say now that the bull market's back. We're just in the early stages here, so that's what's that's what's being signaled to me from the markets as well. And on top of that, I think December is going to be a really healthy month for Ethereum, right? We have eth2 going live tomorrow, basically. eth2 Phase 0, the Beacon Chain Genesis happening tomorrow. That's a huge catalyst, right? We've had more ETH flood into the deposit contract. It's over 800,000 the last time I checked. We have DeFi growing still. We have such a strong narrative around Ethereum going into 2021 that I think, December's going to be a big month. And then during 2021, it's just going to be, even bigger, I think. And not just for Ethereum, but I guess for crypto in general. I mean, we can't ignore the fact that Bitcoin is quite bullish as well, right? I mean, these charts are pretty similar, right? You can see it there. Bitcoin has, as people like to say, the macro narrative behind it, which, I agree with. But I always say that, once you're in crypto, it's all about Ethereum, right? Everything, interesting's happening on Ethereum. So you might buy Bitcoin and just hold it and whatever. But if you actually come into the ecosystem and see what's happening outside of Bitcoin, then you're going to see what's happening in Ethereum and within DeFi specifically. And speaking of DeFi, we have the DeFi Pulse Index here. I think I need to adjust the chart here for a sec. Yeah, I mean, it also went to some lows. I think there's like a bug in the chart here, but it's bouncing as well. I think DeFi hasn't bounced as much because kind of ETH's still moving. So the way I look at it is that, if ETH stops moving so much and goes kind of sideways for a little bit, we'll probably see DeFi recover from that and have some outperformance too. At the end of the day, it's all cycles in these markets. So I definitely think that we're currently in the BTC / ETH cycle with ETH, more primed for like more dominance. And then it'll move to DeFi. And we also saw a bunch of the other kind of like large cap coins like Ripple and Stellar kind of pump last week, but that's fleeting, I think. I actually think it was like a bunch of traders and whales kind of front running and being like, all this new retail is going to come in. These retail investors are going to come in, and what are they going to buy? Oh, we think they're going to buy XRP and things like that. So I think that's what we saw last week. But yeah, interesting to keep an eye on that. So we spoke about the PlusToken kind of ponzi last week and how there was some news that came out around it, basically that the Chinese government had seized all this crypto. It was about a huge amount of BTC. I think it was 1% of all BTC. It was about 0.7% of all ETH and things like that. And then David Puel here, he's an on-chain analyst for Bitcoin specifically. He basically has this thread here that says that the news is just the news is about 6 months old, and a lot of this selling and a lot of the crypto that was seized has already been sold. Specifically, the Bitcoin has already been sold. There's not going to be this massive amount of Bitcoin coming onto the market as was speculated last week. So yeah, he has this thread here. I'll link it in the show notes and everything for you to go check it out. But basically, it runs through where these coins moved from. A lot of them went to Huobi, the Korean-based exchange. I think it's based in Korea anyway. One of the Asian exchanges for sure. And the sell-off, he stipulates started in the middle of 2019. So you know how last week I told you that a lot of people thought that the reason why ETH and BTC ran up during 2019, at least like during Q2, was because of this PlusToken Ponzi. And then of course it wasn't sustained buying or anything like that. So when they started selling, and when the PlusToken Ponzi kind of shut down and the operators were caught, the buying pressure kind of like evaporated. And that's why we saw that pretty brutal drawdown after that. And everyone's kind of hopes were like shattered, right? It's like leading up to it, everyone was like, oh, wow, is the bull market back already? And no, that definitely wasn't the case at the time. So yeah, I'll link this thread in the show notes and the YouTube description. You can go check it out and read in some more detail here. So Andre put out this sneak peek a couple of days ago of the core lending money markets integrated into Yearn. So this is pretty interesting. Yearn had a couple more acquisitions / mergers, / partnerships over the weekend happen as well. They did one with Cover Protocol, which is an insurance protocol. They did it with Cream, which I spoke about obviously last week. And Cream is a money market, right? So I think what they're doing is they're trying to get the talent from these projects to help them with what they want to do within the Yearn ecosystem, which has basically become more than just yield farming, right? They want to do yield farming, they want to do money markets, they want to do insurance. It seems like they want to do things with options as well. So the Yearn ecosystem is definitely growing, and I'm a bit confused though, like where the value is going to flow to, because a lot of these projects that they're absorbing still have their token, right? As I said last week, Cream still has its token, Pickle still has its token, Cover still has its token, and of course Yearn has its own token called YFI. Or YFI, or whatever you want to call it. So is the value going to flow to that, right? Are these other tokens just going to bleed out because there's no love put on them because the Yearn ecosystem is basically all about that Wi-Fi token? I'm not sure. Don't know what's happening here. Actually, Andre put out a blog post that I don't have up here. So if I go to his profile, I might be able to find it here. Unless he didn't share it on here. There's a blog post on his Medium about it when he goes through... Actually, let me bring it up here so you guys can see. He basically, I think, he saw that people were confused about what the terms merger and acquisition means. So here it is, basically. So this blog post, what it does is he goes through and defines the nomenclature that he's been using. And he asks the question, like, what does this actually mean, right? So he defines them, and then he goes on to basically say, what does this mean in the crypto context? And he finishes the piece by saying that he doesn't really have an answer for this. And I agree with that, but at the same time, if you don't have the answer, don't call them like a merger, acquisition, or partnership or whatever. I think collaboration is the better term here for what they've been doing, because as I mentioned last week, these projects still have their tokens. So it's not an acquisition, it's not really a merger, it's not really a partnership, right? It's like a collaboration between these teams, but on top of that, these teams have actually been absorbed as well. So, maybe there's another term there you can use, but I think it's very important to define these things, and I'm glad Andre posted this, because a lot of people were confused. These terms have very specific meanings, right? But when you kind of like put them in an open source world or in a crypto native world, it kind of like blurs the lines, right? And you need to define these things. So yeah, I'll include this in the show notes, of course. You can go give it a read there as well. All right, we had an eth2 quick update from Danny Ryan over the weekend. This was a super quick update, basically just reminding people that the eth2 Genesis is happening on December 1st. Be sure to set up your nodes. I have my little guy right over here on my other PC over here, all ready to go. It's exciting, right? We're finally here. Like tomorrow, basically, we're gonna have the Genesis go live at 12 p.m. UTC. I'm not sure what that is in whatever time zone you're in, but I know what time it is in my time zone. It's about 11 p.m. Australian time, or Eastern Australian time. So actually not bad for me. Usually I expect these things to go live during, when I'm sleeping, like 2, 3 a.m. But this time actually in the US, I do know what time it is in Pacific time. I think it's 4 a.m. Pacific time. So in the US, it's definitely screwing some people there. But that's the time that it's going live. And honestly, waking up in the middle of the night or staying up to witness this kind of historic event is so worth it. I mean, even if it was 2 a.m., 3 a.m. for me, I would have definitely stayed up for it. So yeah, if you haven't done it yet, I implore you to, and you have like ETH in the deposit contract, please, please, please set up your validator like now. We should, the earlier the better, because you don't want to get, run into problems and then have to try and ask people when all this craziness is happening, especially leading up to the launch and immediately after the launch. So definitely go set it up now. That's why I did mine earlier, of course. And I think the biggest risk is that the eth2 beacon chain doesn't start because not enough people have booted up their validators. I don't think that's going to happen. Because you'll lose money if you don't do it. It's not like the test nets where there was nothing at stake. So I think that we'll definitely launch at the time that we've set for Genesis. But yeah, always good as a staker to be prepared for this stuff. All right, so there was a post here from Dan Craig Feist. I think I said his name right here. About your validator. So keeping your validators, your nodes time well in sync is critical here. So for those who may be aware, on the Medalla testnet or the Medasha testnet, there was a critical bug in the Prism client where the clocks weren't in sync. So the network just basically, the validator, like a mass a lot of validators dropped off the network. I think it was like 70% of the network dropped off because they were all running Prism. So you really want to make sure that your time is synced correctly. And he goes through here about like attack vectors and things like that. This is all the technical stuff, but in general, make sure that your time on your kind of like the hardware that you're running this stuff on is correct, so it's in sync. I think there's a few kind of like things here if you're running Ubuntu and like how to do it and how to set it and everything with Windows. And I'm fairly certain you can just go to the calendar and time settings and kind of set it there. So yeah, just one thing to keep in mind if you're running a validator. All right, so I put this tweet out over the weekend. I was looking at one of my favorite dashboards from Dune Analytics here. Decentralized exchange dashboard. Basically, it shows you the health of decentralized exchanges over the last kind of like 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, and even further than that if you scroll down here. Now, what this chart shows is basically the growth of decentralized exchanges each month since January 2019. And as you can see, or for those of you listening in and not watching, the explosion happened in 2020, basically around DeFi summer. So it was kind of flat for 2019. It was growing, but it was kind of flat, right? And then we had this kind of explosion when the compound liquidity mining launched, because then we went into DeFi summer, and we've just been, we grew a lot, we peaked, and then it's been coming down a bit, but the volume is still much higher than it was before that, right? So for November, it was about $15 billion, and then if we actually do a calculation, we can say that there's been almost $90 billion worth of trading volume has happened across decentralized exchanges on Ethereum over the last 12 months, just the last 12 months, and not the beginning of this chart or anything. And most of it happened during DeFi summer, of course. But that's crazy, right? $90 billion on Ethereum, on decentralized exchanges, with the majority happening on Uniswap and Curve, the stablecoin exchange, and SushiSwap's there as well as a big player too. So, and there's a bunch of others here, like colors, I guess, are a bit hard to see. But yeah, Uniswap dominates, right? As you can see. For those who can't see, Uniswap is basically half of the volume, if not more, here. So yeah, that's insane. And we all saw the reports of Uniswap doing more volume some days than like Coinbase, for example. And it's always good to take stock here as well, and to think about the fact that Ethereum is still expensive to use at layer 1 and still kind of like doesn't scale very well. And yet this volume is kind of happening within DeFi. So it just shows the intense kind of like usage of these protocols, regardless of cost or speed or whatever. People want to do this. People want to play in DeFi. They want to trade on decentralized exchanges, even if it costs a little bit more, because you get all the other benefits, right? No KYC, no AML. You don't have to, you can remain pseudo anonymous. You can also not have to deal with centralized exchange risk in general, self-custody of assets. There's so many benefits, right? And it's just, this chart to me shows that. And it shows as well that the incentive mechanisms that teams are using, like liquidity mining, work very well. So it remains to be seen, in the future how this growth continues. But it's also worth keeping in mind this only tracks. I think this only tracks layer 1. I mean, it's got loop ring there, so I'm not sure if it tracks layer 2 as well. But I think going over the next year, as we get more layer 2 protocols live, we're going to see more of an explosion there as well. Speaking of metrics within DeFi, Token Terminal released their new the new version of Token Terminal this week. I really like this site. So what Token Terminal is trying to do is it's trying to bring kind of traditional metrics from the real world into DeFi, right? So things like PE, so PE, PS, volume to market cap, and then obviously the crypto native things like TVL. But then they're trying to generate things like revenue. For those listening in, I'm just showing it on the screen here on the Token Terminal website. So if you want to check it out, it's at terminal.tokenterminal.com. But this is super cool. There's so many metrics here that you can look at. I mean, you can actually base your investment decisions on this, right? If you have a project that you're interested in, let's say 0x, click here, and then you can see all of 0x's metrics over time and how healthy they are. So you can see here, kind of like the market cap and kind of like the DeFi average and how it's performing against DeFi. You can see kind of like the price to sales ratio here, and if that's growing or not. The revenue as calculated by Token Terminal here. So, if you see that going up, right, maybe, you want to buy the token to get exposure to this. So, and it's not just DeFi either. They've also got like some other chains here. They have like Decred and I think Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, of course, here. And then they have like an insight section too, where you can basically subscribe to their newsletter, which I highly recommend you do, because they basically run through how to read these things, right, and how to interpret them. So really cool from Token Terminal. I mean, I personally use it. I think as more of the traditional players come into this ecosystem from traditional finance, they're going to want these things to evaluate these tokens. They're not just like us that like quote unquote ape into things, right? They definitely take their time to research and do things. So I think that's where we should move towards. I don't think we should just be blind speculating on these things, because that's how you end up with 90% drawdowns on these tokens. A quick update from Yam over the weekend as well. So Yam's a project that I think, it's gotten a lot of hate, but they've just been building like crazy still, right? Last week they came out with a new project called the Umbrella Protocol, which is basically like an insurance / kind of coverage project, similar to Nexus Mutual and Cover and things like that. And apart from that, they've been building a bunch of other different things. So this roadmap update gives kind of an update on what they've been up to. So on the protocol level, they've been doing some I guess like with the treasury, they've been basically acquiring assets for the treasury. So you can see here that they purchased $250,000 worth of ETH and $250,000 worth of the DeFi Pulse index to farm the index token with it. So for those who don't know, you can actually farm the index token, which is part of the index co-op, by providing liquidity on Uniswap to the ETH DPI pair. And that's what they did with their treasury, which is really cool because the Yam token holders got to vote on whether they wanted to do this or not. They've also been doing a bit of sushi things as well, a bit of sushi farming. On the product side, they've got Umbrella Protocol nearing the testing phase, as I mentioned before. A few governance updates, and I think these are the kind of like, in progress kind of like proposals for Yam as well. So yeah, go give this a read. I'll link it in the show notes, of course. And yeah, I just think that what Yam is doing is really, really cool in general. I don't hold any Yam tokens or anything like that, and it is a very risky token to hold because it's a rebase token. And what that means is that it's extremely reflexive up and down. So it can go up really high and then it can go down really high, depending on how many people are buying in or selling, of course. But it's more pronounced than a typical token. I won't go into it now, but for those who know what rebase tokens are, you'll be familiar with that too. So yeah, I definitely suggest you don't have to buy the token to be involved with this project. I think what they're doing is really cool. They're giving their treasury funds to Gitcoin as well, to to donate to grants and things like that. So I just think of Yam as like a neat little Ethereum aligned ecosystem rather than something to speculate on. And that's not to say that you can't if you want to. The treasury comes from the speculation. So for those who don't know, the treasury, the money that goes into the treasury comes from a portion of the rebase. So, without people speculating on the token, there wouldn't really be much of a treasury. But in saying that, what they're doing with the treasury is they're trying to increase the value of it without that as well. So that's what they're doing with the index farming too, right? And sushi farming and things like that, which I think is really cool. So active treasury management is definitely something that I would look at going forward, especially into 2021. I think a lot more projects are going to be doing this because they need to set up DAOs for this sort of stuff to, one, to avoid regulatory kind of scrutiny, and two, to let their token holders vote on this, right? And to encourage people to hold the token as well. All right, I mentioned this last week as well, but last week the total Ethereum nodes hadn't flipped the total Bitcoin nodes yet, but this week they have. So total Ethereum nodes is over 11,000. Total Bitcoin nodes is about 11,000, and this is, I think, one of the first times this has happened. I don't know if it's happened in the past, but I don't remember it in recent kind of history it happening. But this is huge, right? And as I mentioned last week, this is obviously due to people having to set up an ETH1 node. Well, not having to, but being encouraged to set up an ETH1 node when they're doing their ETH2 staking. So that's why I've seen an explosion here. I think of just a few weeks ago, it was 8,000 nodes or something. So we've had over 3,000 nodes join, which makes sense. And I mean, if you look at unique depositors, it's at about 3,000. It's not a one-to-one mapping there because some unique depositors are actually not unique. But it's always good to see more Ethereum nodes coming online, Ethereum full nodes. We need to stop relying so much on Infura and things like that. We need people to run their own nodes and be self-sovereign. My ETH2 validator is connected to my Open Ethereum node. As I discussed last week, you want to make sure that you're running a minority ETH1 node as well. So like Open Ethereum, Nethermind, Besu, not Geth. Nothing against Geth as a client, but you want to support the decentralization of the clients as well. So yeah, cool, really cool to see this stat. A little bit of drama that I kind of like tweeted about. I think I should give some context around this tweet for people that saw it. So I basically said, belittling 6 years worth of work by arguing over semantics is a new low for CT, for crypto Twitter. And this stemmed from, I woke up this morning and I was scrolling through my Twitter feed and I'm like, why are people arguing about is ETH2 launching or not? Like, what is this? And it goes back to ETH2, phase 0, the beacon chain launching tomorrow, is not the full ETH2 suite, right? It is a staking chain. There's no sharding, there's no smart contracts, there's none of that. You can't even, move your ETH, right? You can't do anything like that. And people have taken this and been like, oh, well, if you can't do anything with it, then is ETH2 really launching? And it's just like such a silly thing to argue about, and it's so semantic based that I don't even want to entertain this argument. But for the sake of kind of educating everyone listening, watching this recap here, basically, I don't think it's right to say that ETH2 isn't launching tomorrow, right? It's not the full ETH2 suite, and anyone in Ethereum knows that, and it's very easy to Google, ETH2 roadmap and see that. The Ethereum.org website does not state that what's going live on December 1st is the full ETH2 suite. No one in Ethereum will state that, right? There might be some people out there saying ETH2 is going live, and people might look at that and be like, well, no, technically it's not ETH2 going live, it's phase 0 and beacon chain and all that. But semantics, right? I don't like these semantic arguments. They are such a distraction, and as I said, they also belittle the work that the teams have put in over the years. 6 years worth of work from the researchers and the client implementers to get to this point where we finally launched this thing, a novel proof of stake consensus mechanism that, if it works, will be the most decentralized consensus mechanism on the planet, basically. And in kind of like the terminal state will be more decentralized than Bitcoin, than Bitcoin's proof of work consensus mechanism. So that is a huge achievement in of itself. And I think that it's fine to say ETH2 is launching on December 1st, as long as, if you're talking to maybe a new person to Ethereum, you caveat it with saying, it's the first phase of ETH2, but that doesn't mean it's kind of like belittled. It's a huge milestone. It's as big as each milestone is huge, right? Getting phase 1 in with sharding and then doing the merger and things like that. So it's not right to say that it's just, this proof of stake chain doesn't really mean anything. That just is not right. And I'll fight back against that as much as I can. But in general, I don't want to entertain these arguments too much. I'll just put out like a snide comment here and there. I just think it's just, it's quite pointless to harp on about this, and it's also confusing to new users, right? If you're trying to avoid confusing new people, then you're not by arguing semantics, right? You're contributing to that confusion. So I was really sad to see that, but in general, it's like that doesn't really matter. Everyone's still really excited. People don't really care about these semantic arguments. Whoever wants to be at the forefront of this thing and actually be on the right side of this thing knows what this is and what it means and what it shows that the client developers and researchers have done over the years. So yeah, just a little note on that. I probably won't bring it up again because it's such a silly argument. Really cool out of Chainlink as well over the weekend. So they're going to be participating in Gitcoin Grants round 8 as a kind of like a matching provider. So they're going to basically put up a bunch of funds to become a matching partner. For those who don't know, these Gitcoin grant rounds basically are based on what's called quadratic funding. A bunch of organizations will put up a bunch of money. Last round, I think it was like $500,000 or something like that. I think this round they want to go for $1 million, and this will get spread out to the grants on Gitcoin based on individual donations. And the more individual donors you have, and the more smaller donors you have to your grant, the more matching you get, and that comes from these partners, basically. So yeah, this is going to be huge. This is going live this week as well. I think the 2nd or the 4th of December or something like that. The round 8 goes live. I can't remember the exact date. But perfect timing, right? Straight after the eth2 Genesis event happens. And a lot of great projects are going to be in need of funding as well. So I'll talk about this more once it goes live and everything like that. I definitely want everyone, listening to this to participate if they can, donate to a few projects that they like and everything like that. So yeah, I'll cover it more in a future refuel episode, probably later this week. Another really positive thing coming out, I guess this is more of a long-term thing over the next 2 years, but I basically put this tweet out that said, Ethereum's get to celebrate so many major milestones with ETH2, right? So we saw last week that we all got to celebrate the deposit contract minimum ETH required being reached. That was a huge celebration, right? You saw it on Twitter. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was super excited. People who were like, we would never reach the minimum were just like, wow, this is like an impressive showing of support from the Ethereum community for this new thing that we're launching. So we've already achieved that, right? Next up is the Beacon Chain Genesis. We're achieving that tomorrow. There's a small chance maybe it doesn't go live for whatever reason, but it's pretty much 100% that we're going to go live with that. Sharding implemented is coming, hopefully next year, if not 2020, like early 2022. EIP 1559 on both ETH1 and ETH2. So the EIP to basically improve the fee market and to introduce burning on ETH, on the ETH fees being paid. That's, I don't want to give any dates here, but maybe end of 2021, early 2022. ETH1 to ETH2 merger, same kind of deal there. That's huge, right? In and of itself, I think that's self-explanatory. That's probably going to go live end of 2021, early 2022. We hope, right? I'd actually say 2022 for the merger, to be honest. That's a very complicated thing, and you want that to go right. You can't screw that up. And then the final thing was rich sharding. So this might be confusing to some people, but what I mean by this is that the shards going live as part of like the first phase, so phase 1, aren't rich shards, right? They're data shards. So they can't actually do kind of smart contracts or state execution or anything like that. What they can do is they can host data which can be used at layer 2 to do these things. So yeah, rich sharding is basically introducing that, which is commonly referred to as phase 2, which is execution on the shards and smart contracts and things like that. That's still very much an open research kind of thing, and it'll probably evolve over the years. I wouldn't expect that until maybe late 2022, early 2023, but we don't need that for ETH2 to basically be a full kind of like on parity with ETH1. I think that's going to happen either late next year or early 2022 with sharding and the merger and these layer 2 technologies going live. So lots to be excited about there for sure. All right, last thing before we wrap it up for today. So there's going to be a Genesis live stream party put together by eth2. So myself and Eric Connor, Bankless, David Hoffman, and Ryan Sean Adams, and DeFi Dad. As a lot of you would probably know him from Zappa and also from his own YouTube channel where he explains a lot of DeFi things. So yeah, this live stream is going to go going to start at 6:30 a.m. Eastern time, Eastern Standard Time in the US. And that's about half an hour, I think, before the Genesis is slotted to go live. So the links will be on Twitter for that. Definitely keep an eye out. We'd love you to join us. There'll be a chat on the YouTube stream and everything like that, so you can talk to us in there. And yeah, let's watch this thing go live. I think there's going to be more than just obviously our Genesis stream, like eth2's one. There's going to be, I think our ETH staker is doing it. I think there's going to be an official one from like the Ethereum, quote unquote official from like the Ethereum Foundation. I think there's going to be a few of them around, right? But we'd love for you to join our one. If you want to watch multiple, you can. You just have to have like a bunch of monitors or, one big monitor and put them everywhere. So you can try that as well. But yeah, definitely. I mean, this is going to be huge, right? The next refuel tomorrow will probably come out just before the chain goes live. And then the one after that will be when I kind of do my recap on everything that's happened there. So an exciting 2-3 days week for Ethereum. As I said, Gitcoin Grants matching round 8 going live as well this week. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of other things happening, as there always is in the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, keep an eye out. And if you want to keep updated with it, you maybe don't have the time, maybe too many real life commitments, and you don't live in Ethereum like I do, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Daily Gwei newsletter, follow us on Twitter, join the Discord, all that good stuff to keep up to date with everything that I'm doing at the Daily Gwei. And keep up to date with eth2 as well. We also have a weekly newsletter that goes out with eth2 that covers Ethereum, and we also have a weekly podcast where Eric and I talk through kind of like recapping the previous week. So always good to get Eric's perspective on things. I really think highly of his opinions on things. He's got some great context there. So different to what I do with the Daily Gwei, the Daily Gwei Refuels. So yeah, that's it for today, I think, everyone. Thank you for watching, listening, wherever you are. I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you for tomorrow's episode. Thanks, everyone.